What's up, Sports Spectrum? It's Matt Forte with Jason Romano here, my wise counsel, and we have the pleasure of sitting with Tommy Edman, the World Series champion right here.
World Series champion.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Walk us through that, man. I mean, I've never played in a Super Bowl. I've been in the playoffs, but nothing as big as that type of stage. How was that? What was the feeling like?
Yeah, it was, everybody always says it's what you always dream about as a little kid, and you can kind of picture yourself in those moments, but I think when you actually get there, the weight of everything kind of hits you. And I think playing in those games, it was definitely like a different kind of emotion that I'd felt. I felt more emotion playing those games than I really ever had playing baseball before, and just to go out on top the way we did, it was truly special.
So, I mean, y'all don't get it. I'm sitting here, Tommy's a baller. Like, you are a utility player. Like, you can play outfield, infield, can do it all. You got a Golden Glove back in 21. And, man, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the journey to the World Series. I mean, you didn't start out with the Dodgers. Talk about that, because I think you started off with the Cardinals, and you had a wrist injury, or had to have surgery.
That's right. I had the wrist surgery last October, and it was a really weird injury where it was kind of unique in that not many baseball players had gotten it before, so they didn't necessarily know when I was going to be back. My surgeon initially estimated I'll be back for spring training, and I kept kind of getting delayed a little bit. I kept trying to swing, and it would continue to hurt, and I had a couple of setbacks and got to the point in May where I was kind of thinking, like, all right, I just want to get on the field at some point this year. Unfortunately, in May, it turned a corner to where it started to feel better as I swung with a little bit more force and seeing faster velocity. And I was getting ready to go on a rehab assignment end of June, and then I ended up spraining my ankle. So I was out for another few weeks after that and tried to get on rehab, and the ankle still didn't quite feel right. And I was injured at the time of the trade deadline, and since I wasn't really contributing to the Cardinals because obviously being injured, I ended up getting traded over to LA. So it's kind of, I felt like almost because of those injuries that I ended up getting traded to the Dodgers, and fortunately that led to a great postseason and us winning the championship. So now looking back on that, I can kind of see, what God's plan was all along. It seemed very frustrating at the time, but it led to even greater plans than I could have imagined.
Yeah, we never know God's plan, right? That's why we have to kind of take into context, like, hearing God's voice. Because if you look back a year before, we got wrist surgery, we got delayed, a setback in recovery, and that can, I know from experience, when you're injured and you're trying to make a comeback, you're trying to speed it up, really, because you want to get out there and perform, and you want to produce. And in the sports business, when you aren't producing, things happen. Like, you either get cut or you get traded, or the media gets on you and all kind of stuff. But how important is it to focus on God's plan for your life than to kind of try to see your own path and be disappointed when development gets delayed?
Yeah, there's a lot of frustration involved, for sure. There's a lot of times when you kind of hear the outside voices, the distractions, not only from other people, but also from in your own head too. You're kind of questioning yourself, like, hey, am I going to get back to where I was before? People on the outside are questioning that as well. But I think to be able to rely on God during those times and have that inner peace, being like, okay, I know God's got a plan for my season, and not just the season, but just understanding that it's not necessarily about the performance on the field, but our identity as a son of God, and a follower of Jesus, and knowing that there's ways that I can, have faith to God other than just my performance on the field, whether that's being supportive of my teammates, being a good husband and father. And I think having that freedom of mind, knowing that it doesn't necessarily rely on me getting back on the field and playing as well as I possibly could, helped me maintain, a good attitude throughout the whole recovery. And I think having a good mindset as you're recovering kind of helps recovery. If you're stressed the whole time, there's things that can happen in your body that kind of end up getting delayed. So, having that inner peace, I think, certainly helps during that frustrating time.
Yeah, you mentioned mindset, and that stuck out to me just now, because you have to have a different mindset to be traded, basically, mid-season or at the end of the trade deadline, and then to go to a team and actually, I mean, you heavily contributed. You were NLCS MVP, and was able to win, take and help the Dodgers into a World Series. So, but at that time, I've seen it where it's hard to transition to a new team in general. The fear of the unknown. I don't know any of the guys, or maybe I do know somebody, but not the camaraderie yet in the clubhouse. I almost said locker room. Clubhouse is baseball. But the camaraderie there, like, there's a lot of fear of the unknown. So walk us through, like, how did you remain solid or, continue to have a solid foundation with your family too, because that's a lot of transition of moving across the country and moving parts with that. And, how did that work with that?
Yeah, it takes a little bit for sure. Those first few weeks going to a new team. I'd been with St. Louis from the time I got drafted in 2016, so I was there for 8 years. So I'd gotten very familiar with everybody there, the players, the staff, and then my wife had gotten close with the wives and girlfriends on the team as well. So it was a transition for us both. But fortunately, going to LA, it was we grew up in San Diego, so being 2 hours from home, it was a little bit like a homecoming. But so that made things a little bit easier, but those first few weeks, you're still meeting everybody, kind of trying to feel everybody out, see who's, see who you can kind of mess with. You gotta almost like watch yourself around a little bit. Not that I'm really messing around with too many people, anyways. And then the other big part of it too is figuring out who your brothers in Christ are. And fortunately, we had a great group in LA. I think I got traded on like a Wednesday, and then I was able to go to a chapel on like Saturday. So I almost immediately had that connection with those guys right away. And there was another guy, Michael Kopech, who got traded at the deadline as well. So we were kind of in the same situation, and we kind of bonded over that. And it took a few weeks for sure, just getting comfortable around everybody and being able to, I don't know. I mean, just feel comfortable playing and getting my preparation and routine and everything like that. But everybody there was very welcoming and did a great job of helping make that transition pretty seamless. So I was fortunate in that regard, and just grateful for that organization.
I haven't started my Major League Baseball run yet, but I've never been teammates with you or anything. But from our knowing each other right now, you seem like a pretty likable guy. Yeah. And what if there's someone who is not used to, maybe they're super introverted, they're not used to being kind of outgoing, or, going into a situation like you did. How important is it to create community and have someone to lean on or to identify with, finding your brothers in Christ in a situation like that? Because we know how bad isolation is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, it's super important, and that's something I've kind of started to realize over the past few years. I think since COVID, because COVID promoted so much isolation, and just obviously being alone is not good. You get some crazy thoughts, and the devil can really attack you when you're alone. So I think it's the most important thing. And for me, I'm honestly kind of an introverted person. Like, I almost have to go outside my comfort zone a little bit to go have conversations and meet new people. But that's something I've almost kind of tried to make a priority the last couple of years is, creating that community, forcing myself to go outside and outside my comfort zone and have deep conversations with people, not just surface level, but, just really talk to people who you can have real life conversations about, talk about our faith and things we're struggling with. But, it can be tough for sure. That's kind of what our society is almost like as a whole. It promotes like individualism and everybody kind of fending for themselves. But I think as a follower of Christ, especially, community isn't just like a little extra thing you can add on, but it's one of the most important things you can do.
Speaking of community, my man Jay Nice is right here.
Yeah,
he's got a question for you.
I do. I'm big on moments, Tommy. I know you were on Sports Spectrum a couple of years ago, and we sat at this conference and kind of talked through some things. But the moments that you experienced just in that past last month, I should say, of playing with the Dodgers in the postseason, it went to another level. Like with the Mets, like you were hitting in every game. You won the NLCS MVP. So I'm going to ask you two moments. The first is Game 6 in LA, and it's that moment when you hit the home run and you realize, like, this could, I mean, I could see that smile on your face running around the bases like, okay, like we're real close here to being, National League champions and going to the World Series. Describe that moment, because a lot of athletes do not get a chance to be on that big of a stage and hit that big of a home run and then be named, and you're the NLCS MVP. You got all these superstars. You got Shohei and Mookie Betts, and you're up on the stage, and they're presenting you, the guy who just came a couple months ago with this trophy. I would love to have you just kind of explain that moment for all of us.
Yeah, kind of like I was saying earlier, it's an emotion I'd never really felt on the baseball field before. I think with how long the season is, 162 games, I really try to stay level-headed. I know some guys can do it. Some guys have big ups and downs. Not necessarily that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Right.
But for me, I just can't do it. I can't get way high. Have those big outbursts of emotion. And what you saw, I just screamed around first base, and that was a huge outburst of emotion for me.
Is that the most emotional you've ever been?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Had to have been, yeah.
Yeah.
But and then after that, our team had been playing so well. It was kind of one of those things throughout the postseason where, no matter what the score was, we just had all the confidence in the world that we were going to win that game. We got, even in the game that we clinched in the World Series, we were down 5-0. And
I was going to ask you about that one too.
Yeah.
At that point, you could easily have said, okay, we'll just go back to LA and try game 6. And it's nope, you still had confidence that you could come back from 5-0 down.
Yeah, and I think that just kind of spoke to our team and the resilience we had. We had a lot of experience on that team, and a lot of just really resilient, gritty dudes, and just having the confidence as well too. And I think I've been parts of teams kind of like that in the past where we just keep on fighting regardless. But I don't think that I had ever been a part of a team that was to that degree.
Yeah.
So I think once we got up in Game 6, it was kind of okay, we're winning this thing, and just start thinking about the World Series, and that's what I always dream about.
Yeah.
To be able to be on that stage and have contributed like I did, I didn't really realize that I was going to win the MVP until Kike actually came over to me in the 6th or 7th inning, and he's like, "What's up, MVP? You ready to go to the World Series?" And it kind of clicked in my head. I was like, "Oh wait, I've had a really good series. I got a chance to."
Yeah.
Because we'd had so many guys. I think Muncy had reached base 14 times in a row, and Shohei had a bunch of big homers, so I was kind of thinking all those guys could have won it, but we really did have a few guys who could have won MVP. We scored I think we set the record for most runs scored in a series or something like that.
You did. I told you before we started, I am a New York Mets fan.
Yeah.
So I was sad.
I was like, you crushed Jason's dream.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
He didn't crush my dream. I'm a mature man now. I can handle it. But I told Tommy I was rooting for Tommy Edman as well.
Yeah.
So I'm watching the Mets, wanting them to win so bad. But then you hit the homer, and my wife's like, "Why are you not mad right now?" I said, "Because Tommy's my guy." I said, "We love him. He's part of PAO. He's been on Sports Spectrum. It couldn't happen to a better dude." So, it was a little less of a painful experience. I was just happy because the Mets won the most games and gave you guys a better, in some ways, a better series than the Yankees. So I was okay with that.
Yeah, they were hot. They had a good team. They had Lindor and Pete had a great postseason. And,
yeah.
All 3 series were tough. Honestly.
They were. Yeah.
I know that we won 4-1.
Padres great too.
Yeah, that Padres, we were down 2-1 in that first round, and it didn't look great for us, but kind of like I was saying, we got that gritty group that just kept on fighting back.
Matt, I wanted to say too, I don't know if you remember Game 1. It's one of the great postseason sporting events, forget baseball games, you'll ever watch. And Freddie Freeman hits the walk-off grand slam, and that's another moment. We could sit here and talk about moments all day.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure for the audience that we mentioned that game as well, and the fact that Tommy scored the game-winning run in the clincher in Game 5 at Yankee Stadium. So pretty cool things that he just got to experience here over the last, few months.
Yeah, so I'm sitting next to a baller, man.
Yes, you are.
Y'all don't realize who I'm sitting next to. But
Yes, you are.
I wanted to talk a little.
いや、トミーへドマンド選手とロサンゼルス・ドジャースの素晴らしい旅をここまで振り返ると、本当に感動せずにはいられません。シーズン途中のトレードや度重なる怪我にもかかわらず、彼の粘り強さと信念は、まさに奇跡を生み出しました。そして、彼がナショナルリーグチャンピオンシップシリーズ NLCS MVP に輝き、ワールドシリーズでの活躍で チームを頂点へ導いた瞬間は、野球ファンとして心を震わせるものでした。彼自身が語っていたように、この成功の裏には、自分を信じ続ける強い精神力と、仲間たちとの深い絆がありました。特に、トレード後に新しいチームで仲間と築いたコミュニティの重要性は、私たちの日常生活にも共通する教訓ですよね。孤独を乗り越え、助け合いながら目標に向かって進む姿は、スポーツの枠を超えて、多くの人々に勇気を与えています。さらに、トミー選手が語った神の計画という考え方も印象的でした。一見すると、困難に思える出来事でも、それが未来の大きな成功へとつながる一部であることを受け入れる姿勢は、私たちも見習うべきかもしれません。野球という舞台を通して、彼は単にプレイヤーとしてではなく、一人の人間としての成長も見せてくれました。そして何よりも、ロサンゼルス・ドジャース全体のチームスピリットが際立っていました。試合中に何度も見られた粘り強さ、最後まで諦めない姿勢は、絶対に勝つという確固たる信念に支えられていました。試合を通じて何度も逆境を乗り越えたその姿は、ファンの心に深く刻まれました。試合のハイライトの中でも特に印象に残るのは、トミー選手が NLCS 第6戦で放った劇的なホームランです。その瞬間、彼の喜びが爆発し、チーム全体が勝利に近づいているという確信を感じさせました。また、ワールドシリーズ第5戦での逆転劇も見逃せません。試合序盤に5点差を追いかける厳しい状況から、チーム全員が一丸となり、最後にはトミー選手が勝利のランを決めるという劇的な展開がありました。さらに、彼が新しいチームに馴染む過程も感動的です。2016年にセントルイス・カージナルスにドラフトされ、8年間慣れ親しんだ環境を離れることは簡単ではなかったと語るトミー選手。それでもロサンゼルスへの移籍後、迅速にチームに溶け込み、新たな仲間との絆を築き上げました。特に同じ時期に移籍してきたマイケル・コペック選手との友情や、チーム内で見つけた親交の仲間たちとの交流が、彼にとって大きな支えとなりました。移籍のプレッシャーや新しい環境への不安を乗り越えたトミー選手の姿勢は、多くの人々に希望を与えました。そして、ロサンゼルス・ドジャースの試合全体を通して見られたチーム全員の粘り強さも忘れることはできません。ワールドシリーズでは、第5戦で5点差を追いかけるという逆境に立ち向かい、チーム全員の努力で奇跡の勝利をつかみました。この試合は、観客だけでなく、野球界全体にとっても忘れられないものとなりました。これらの瞬間は、野球ファンだけでなく、スポーツ全般の愛好者にとっても永遠に語り継がれることでしょう。トミー選手の個々の貢献だけでなく、ロサンゼルス・ドジャース全体の結束力と粘り強さが、観客に多大な感動を与えました。このストーリーを通じて、改めて感じるのは、スポーツが持つ力、そしてその裏にある人間ドラマの素晴らしさです。トミー・エドマン選手とロサンゼルス・ドジャースの活躍は、ただ勝利を収めるだけでなく、すべてのスポーツファンに希望と感動を届けてくれました。もしの記事を楽しんでいただけたなら、ぜひのチャンネルを登録して、最新のスポーツ情報や感動的なストーリーを一緒に楽しんでいきましょう。あなたのコメントやシェアもお待ちしています。一緒にスポーツの魅力をもっと広げていきましょう。次回の動画でまたお会いできるのを楽しみにしています。ロサンゼルス・ドジャースとトミー・エドマン選手のように、私たちもそれぞれのフィールドで最高の結果を目指していきましょう。